All right, everyone. Yesterday, Beto O'Rourke actually did something cringy. No, I don't mean that he skateboarded out onto a stage. He does that regularly, too. He's like, yeah, man, it's so tubular. It's like the funniest shit ever. It's like he's trying to act younger than he actually is. It's like, okay, we get it. You're a young-ish Democratic candidate. You know, you certainly look younger than Ted Cruz, who looks like he's 60, even though he's only in his 40s. Understood. That's fine. I'm sure, you get that. You get really great youth vote because you're so rad and tubular. Wonderful, but, it's a cringe fest. He puts out this infographic there, and yesterday on Twitter he's like, no, you chip in and donate to our campaign. We're only 4 points behind in the polls. Meanwhile, you have cherry-picked out of the most recent dozen or so polls. You cherry-pick the one that shows you the least behind. Your infographic itself shows you at 46, Ted Cruz at 50. And then they make Ted Cruz look smaller in there and put it in grayscale, and it's like an attempt to mislead people. This is actually like an attempt to defraud consumers or something. They want to consume a political product, and you're trying to present it as though somehow you still have a chance. I'm sorry, Beto O'Rourke is not going to win in the state of Texas. He's been statistically behind by a huge margin in the polls. He has to cherry pick to find one he's only 4 points behind in. Meanwhile, Menendez is only leading by 4 or 5 points in New Jersey, and people are acting like the sky is falling. Oh my God, we got to buff him up to the tune of $10 million. Make sure we don't lose that New Jersey race. Meanwhile, Beto's behind by a significant margin. And he freaks out, and he's like, yeah, pay me some fucking money. Basically, his infographic and his tweet there boiled down to, I am losing, I'm a fucking loser, please give me money. By the way, when I inevitably lose, which is like a 99% fucking chance at this point, all that money will go into the DNC coffers, and then they'll filter it through a corporation, and I'm sure that he'll get a payback. Do you not think that's the way politics works? They use middlemen to shuffle money around in ways that would normally be illegal all the time. So it's like, yeah, give me more of your money. I'm a grassroots candidate, backed by Goldman Sachs and the DNC, which literally sucks every other corporation the whole fucking world off. The pharmaceutical companies support the DNC. Wall Street supports the DNC, although they like the fact that Trump is in office as far as stocks and bonds go. Their normal financial materials do better when you have a populist in office, but they prefer to fund the Democrats, probably because they're afraid that otherwise the Democrats will actually regulate them in meaningful ways instead of regulating their competitors out of existence. This is what DC tends to do. It's what they're doing with Silicon Valley right now on the subject of alt tech and censorship. Oh yeah, just censor the competitors of all the lamestream establishment politicians. It'll be all right. Don't worry, we hid the money. we used a third party in the Cayman Islands, so don't worry, nobody will be able to tell where it came from. So Beto is saying, oh yeah, I'm only 4 points behind. Well, it might be 9 points behind, depending on the poll you listen to, and in the aggregate it's about 7. 7 points. That's a significant gap. Ted Cruz will win re-election quite handily. Look, there's still the possibility within these races. I'm not counting on it. That's why I give a more conservative estimate of how the GOP will do in the midterms. I see them holding the Senate, making gains. Some people are like, oh, they'll end up with 60 seats at the end of the day. I don't think so. I'm using a more conservative estimate. I expect them to lose the House, albeit narrowly. Not like at Nate Silver levels. He's like, oh, 7 to 10 seat gain beyond the break-even point for the Democrats. No, more like 2 or 3 probably. It's not going to be a big win. There's the possibility, though, that the polls are systemically wrong. If they're systemically wrong, because they're based on prior estimates from 2016, there's a pretty damn good chance that they're wrong in favor of the Democrats. Ted Cruz could end up 10, 11 points ahead of Beto in the final result, if that's the case. Yeah, and then what's he going to say? Oh yeah, sorry to all my constituents that pretended I was the liberal messiah firebrand. Yeah, sorry I skateboarded out on stage and looked like a total fucking dumbass in front of the whole country. Sorry I said stupid things during the debates and got mocked by everyone with a working brain. Sorry that I had to use bots in order to, rig Twitter polls and escape the notice of groups like CNN, of course. I'm sorry for being a loser, but thanks for the $10-20 million you donated to me. On top of the $10-20 million that corporations have given me recently because they tried to knock Ted Cruz out. Look, the big win for Democrats, like a true blue wave, would be to knock out Ted Cruz. Of all of the vulnerable, technically vulnerable, not pragmatically, but originally looked kind of vulnerable, of all of the senators they could target, Ted Cruz would be the head honcho of you knock him out and you get major kudos. They're not going to be able to do that. Meanwhile, the Republicans want to knock out Claire McCaskill. Because of the Project Veritas releases, she tanked in the polls. She lost a net 4 to 5 points in the polls post-release. That affected the beginning of early voting. At this point, Claire McCaskill has a 90% chance of getting knocked out, it looks like, regardless of what happens in the House. In the Senate, the Republicans have accomplished everything they want. They'll end up with more senators at the end of the midterms than they have now. They'll continue to control the Senate, and they'll have knocked out the highest-ranking Democrat they could knock out, short of Menendez. Now, of course, that's possible, too. You're talking about a 4 or 5 point gap there, again, aggregated. I assume that that's close to reality. The idea that there's a 5 point polling differential is pretty out there. I'd say there might be a point or two, which throws a few races towards the GOP, gives them that gain in the Senate, certainly. I just don't think it's 4 or 5 points. If that does happen, though, then Menendez would be the big one getting knocked out. And he is vulnerable. He's in New Jersey. Again, this is a far blue state and an incumbent Democrat, but he's got so much apparent corruption baggage that it's starting to weigh heavily on him. He's being pounded over and over. They are having to free up extra millions of dollars in the last week of the fucking midterms to defend his seat because he looks vulnerable. What happens if he barely squeaks his way back to re-election by a point or two because the polling differentials are wrong? What happens to the Democrats at that point? How are they going to claim, yeah, we just barely, by the skin of our teeth, we retained this seat in New Jersey, of all places. One of the most fucking blue places in the whole country. But don't worry about it. I mean, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with our party. It's a blue wave. That's not a blue wave. Beto, meanwhile, he's still sucking off his constituents for money that he doesn't, what's he going to do with it? Buy another TV ad like it's been effective? He has been consistently behind by 5 to 10 points, 7 points to 8 points in the aggregate, depending on what day you consult the polls on. 7 to 8 point gap on a good day. And he has consistently been there for several months. Early voting already kicks in. Those are heavily going to tilt in favor of Cruz. At this point, even a systemic collapse of the GOP because of, synagogue, the Never Trump synagogue shooter or whatever, probably wouldn't save him in Texas. Probably won't. Florida's looking like a complete toss-up. Florida is about as close as you can get. Again, if there is a polling differential of even 2 or 3 points, then the Republicans grab up Florida too. They certainly grab Missouri. That puts them at 53 right there. I would say that's a pretty good night. What happens if they knock out Menendez? Oh, trust me, if the New Jersey results come in, when all these different Senate results start coming in, if it looks like Menendez has lost his seat, the Republicans are going to sweep the Senate. They'll end up with like 57 fucking seats probably if that happens. A lot of the other vulnerable seats with incumbent Democrats, they're in fundamentally red areas like McCaskill or the Utah race. Or certainly Texas, where they're defending. This is the one seat they're kind of defending. Cruz is the incumbent, but the Democrats aren't going to pick it up. In order for them to take the Senate, they would have to knock out Ted Cruz at this point. There aren't any other vulnerable incumbents to target. He's not looking too vulnerable at the moment, but Beto's looking very vulnerable. Maybe he'll do some more cringy bullshit. Fucking pay me. He'll do a skateboard rally. He'll say, hey, I'm going to see how many skateboard tricks I can do without falling and breaking my skull. I want you to donate $1,000 for every second that I'm able to do Tony Hawk shit. And it'd be very, very much a cringe fest. This is what the Democratic Party thinks is good to do youth outreach. No, we're not going to build jobs for you. We're not going to lower taxes. We're not going to renegotiate trade deals that are suppressing U.S. industry. No, we're going to do skateboard tricks. Pokemon, go to the polls, guys! Beto O'Rourke this is the cringiest campaign since the Hillary Clinton campaign. It's the cringiest campaign of the year. The Democrats were so optimistic about Beto's chances. They're like, oh my God, it's within a couple points of Cruz. This is months ago when the Republicans were, 15 points behind in the generic ballot. Yeah, it was a dark time for the GOP. He's only a couple points behind. We'll just give him more money. He's young, kind of suave-ish, well-spoken, or so they thought. He's the new messiah of the Democratic Party. They were trying to, what they were doing? They're trying to groom him for a presidential run. That's what they want. They see Texas getting less red over time. They're like, hey, if we field a popular former Texas senator as a presidential candidate, 2020, 2024, whatever, and he's on the youngish side, as long as he steers clear of any significant baggage, he could grab Texas. That gives him the election. They're trying to groom somebody from a state that is red in order to get a candidate who's capable of defeating the Republicans therein. I think McCaskill's another person they would have loved to have groomed for a run. She's barely going to get reelected if she does at all. At this point, she's got less than a 50-50 chance. The last poll shows her systemically collapsing from a near tie to 4 points behind in the wake of the Veritas releases. Early voting's already happening in all these states. So, Beto O'Rourke really fucks the Democratic Party now, doesn't he? You should have gone with a candidate who actually would, know what the fuck they were doing campaign-wise. That's about all. Peace out.